Hi there, welcome back to the Wolf-PAC virtual workshop. My name is Bill Spots. I am the volunteer legislative director in the state of New Mexico. And our session here is going to be discussions between Wolf-PAC members and legislators that have been our sponsors and champions in the last few years. So to give them maximum time, I think we'll get started here. We're going to start off with the state of Vermont and Michael Mineta and Senator Ginny Lyons. Take it away.
Okay. Well, I'll set this up just by telling a really quick story, Senator Lyons. When I started doing Wolf-PAC, I was really green, just like a lot of people out there. Probably, if you're just hearing about our plan for the first time, I didn't know you could even call state legislators. I wasn't that familiar with our plan, but I believed in it. So it was this conversation I had with Cenk, the founder of Wolf-PAC, and we had like this 2-hour conversation one time, and he was basically just like, "Tell me everything you know about Wolf-PAC," and and then at the end of the conversation, right? So I did. I just like, okay, this is where we're at, whatever, right? And we hadn't passed any states. This is way back in like 2013 or 2012 or something like that. And he said at the end of the conversation, he goes, "Okay, well, what state are we going to pass? Like, what's our first state going to be?" And I had no idea, right? I was just like instinctively just said Vermont. For no reason. I had never talked to a legislator in Vermont. I, didn't know anything about the state. It was just like, oh, it's Vermont. They lead on a lot of things. Maybe it'll be Vermont, but I had no intel. So I just remember like I hung up that phone that day, and I was like, oh damn, like I gotta go try to pass this state. Like, what do I do? So I looked up legislators who had been champions of campaign finance reform. I looked up some other bills. It was that Vermont was one of the states that has called on Congress to propose an amendment on this issue, right, of fixing our broken campaign finance system. So I looked it up, and Ginny Lyons was the prime sponsor. So I said, okay, well, I guess I'll call her. So I called the number on there, and it was a state house operator. And they were like, oh, okay, what do you want? I'm like, well, can I talk to Senator Lyons? And he's like, well, she's not here, but do you want her home number? I'm like, are you serious? Like at that time, I'm like, are you serious? Really? Yeah, I guess. Okay, sure. So he gave it to me, and I did. Called up, and like within 30 minutes of me researching, who's champions of campaign finance reform in Vermont, I was on the phone with Senator Lyons, and I was like, well, this is what we're doing, and she was just like, yeah, I'm in. Like this is we got to do it. So the rest, was kind of history. I mean, I could talk about Vermont for hours and hours, but Jenny, what was your, I guess take it away. What was your experience working on this?
Oh yeah. So this is an interesting story, because when Citizens United passed, that was like an explosion under me, and sent a lot of us into the air. And so putting together a resolution to overturn Citizens United was the first simple step for us to do. And the interesting thing is, Mike, before you contacted me, it was a pretty isolating experience that I was going through, because it was hard to explain to people that we need to do something different. We need to have a constitutional amendment. It was like walking on thin ice when this all started. I didn't know how much support was out there, and then all of a sudden it was there. And when you called and when you showed up, that really gave the boost that we needed to move ahead. You had the information. You knew how to work with people in the legislature. You knew how to talk with folks, and it made a huge difference. I have to say that when we introduced our first resolution for against Citizens United, and we started talking about the relationship of money and speech, and the importance of one vote, one person, not one vote, one corporation. It got really difficult for a lot of people in the state. Some people thought we were becoming anti-business, and some people thought that campaign finance reform was going to be too restrictive. So all the information that you had to help us through was critically important. Uh, and then beyond that, we also linked up with Lawrence Lessig, who has spoken this evening, and he was a great asset to us. Uh, and actually, after he came and spoke with us, then there you were, and you've been one of the challenges that we face. Let me just say one more thing.
Sure.
One of the challenges that we have faced is that the question about whether or not Article 5 really works, and whether you can narrow it down to a single issue. And so that people are so confused about that. So some of our more progressive legislators are have come out against having the Article 5 resolution in. And that's disturbing to me because, as you know, and as we've learned, Article 5 is the way to go, because nothing is going to happen. If we don't, if we have the critical mass of states, then maybe Congress will act. We've seen that in the past, but so just a little bit about some of our experience.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't know if you have a question, or there's so much to talk about. It's just trying to point out some of the one of the real pitfalls is people who don't understand the process, and that the process can work, and having people there who, like you, who were so clear, and then building a cohort of legislators to support the work that we've been doing has been really important.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I guess I just have the question, that a general question. Do you believe that we're actually going to fix this? Like, are you optimistic, or are you more cynical? I'm just genuinely curious. I don't know.
You know, I go up and down about this right now with the way the federal government is. I am just it's depressing, to tell you the honest truth. The way our democracy is being turned right up on its head is so unfortunate. Uh, when you look at what's happening, it's all about the money really taking over the democratic process, and the voices are lost. I mean, think about what's going on today in Portland, Oregon, and in other in Burlington, Vermont, where people are protesting because their voices are not heard about our police brutality. Uh, that would not be happening if we had a federal government that supported the individual voter and the people. So that's what makes this a bit challenging right now. I think it's really critically important that we keep talking about this issue, so that people understand that this is fundamental to the democratic process. Having having campaign finance reform is absolutely critical to keeping our elections free of large money influence. I was going to say corporate influence, but it's not just corporations, it's individuals who influence as well.
Great, thank you, Jenny. I appreciate that. Last question. I know we got to move on, but I always like to ask this question of people who are in office. And do you remember why you initially ran for office? Was there like one story or one incident or something that said, "Hey, I got to do this"?
Oh yeah. I was asked to run for the Senate. I was the chair of my select board, which in a small Vermont town, small Vermont is like being a mayor of a town, and so I had worked I had worked hard to build some environmental protections against large development, and we were trying to protect our small town from being run over by developers. And it seems like they were the people with the money coming in and making decisions. But so I worked hard in that area, and I brought people together. And then I was asked to run for the Senate, and I'm really pleased that I ran for the Senate. Uh, Having had the experience at the local level and understanding the fundamentals of democracy, I think was absolutely key. So my original interests, of course, are in climate change and the environment. Today, I'm also working in the area of healthcare and trying to make some changes that will improve access for folks and reduce costs. So it ultimately, it's all about money, how much things cost, and how to maintain our quality of life. So that's
Yeah.
why I got into politics.
Cool. That's a great answer. Thank you. Thank you, Jenny. And thanks for being here tonight. Really appreciate you
Thank
taking the
you.
time. I know you're working hard and you just got out recently of the session today. So I know you're tired but I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And Mike, I can't thank you enough for being with us and helping us as we go through decisions on. It is absolutely critical that we get the critical mass of states so that
Yep.
we can begin the Article 5 process. There's no question about it. Thank you.
All
Thanks
right.
for your work.
All right. Thank you. See ya.
Take care.
You too.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
We're going to move on to our next state, the state of Colorado. Grant, you can hop on here, and Representative Jenny Arndt. Take it away.
So does Grant go first, or do I do?
He's going to interview you.
Oh, okay. Go, Grant.
So, Jenny, can you start off with how you got involved in politics?
Sorry for the spooky light. I've been relegated to I'm in Maine, and Ginny, our son goes to Middlebury, and I am up here in Maine in our cabin for a week, and so that's why I have the little spooky light. So how did I get in politics? I grew up in the town I represent, and I was involved all through. I said first grade is kind of when I became my first political move. Was my dad said, raise your hand if the teacher wants you to stay late after school and clean the desk. And that's what politics is to me, is like raising your hand and say, I'll do that. And I'll do that for the community. And I'll take time out of my playtime or whatever. And I'll clean the desks. And then it kind of goes from there. I'll quit my job and run for office for $29,000 a year. When I have 3 kids and a husband who travels overseas. You're not a hero. You're just putting into your community when they ask you to, and in a way that makes sense for you in your life. Other people do that through 4-H or being a good parent or PTA. No one's a hero. No one's above each other. Being elected is like a temporary situation. If you just have that volition of service and input to your community, you can do it in lots of ways. I was also in the Peace Corps. People are like, well, why did you give 2 years of your life to non-Americans, right? Well, that's a good question, but that's still the idea, is maybe we're all one of a part and we can give where we want. So that's a long-winded answer, Grant, but I think it started in first grade.
Well, Jenny, Representative Arndt, I think, people would love to talk to you for hours. Yeah, I'm actually having to break the mold of trying to call you Representative Arndt. Just because we're on this call, I've gotten so used to calling you Jenny.
Yeah.
But why did you decide to support this legislation?
Oh, well, I think Citizens United became overturned before I was elected. And I remember hearing it on NPR in the morning, and I leaned up on my shoulder and I looked over at my husband and I said, that will be the single biggest detriment to our democracy in our lifetime. And I felt that just so in my core that this would be the game changer of how people get elected, how they govern, and who they attend to. And I really meant it. And when did it get overturned? Grant, remind me. I can't remember.
I believe it was 2011.
11. So I got elected in 14. I served in 15. So 3 years before I even got elected. Right. So I just thought the new legislators, the new people coming on board will be more driven by money than attending to their constituents. And I can't speak for those before me because we have term limits in Colorado. But I will tell you, since I've been elected, I have had so many times my leadership, I'm a Democrat, put their hand on my shoulder and remember who our friends are. And that's code word for remember who donated more to our party. And I said, if that means who donated more, get your hand off my shoulder and get away from me. But it is really, honestly, very true. I will tell you, it makes a difference. After we get elected, we get a little sit down from our sponsors, and they show us in a graphic, like pie graph, who donated more and by percentage to getting other Democrats elected, and what the legislation is that will be coming up. And I usually just get up and walk out. But it is a direct tie.
And so, Jenny, how has it been? What has your experience been working with Wolf-PAC volunteers on this legislation?
Well, the Wolf-PAC, I will tell you very much originally, and you guys were saying how new you were. There were some very committed Wolf-PAC volunteers who came up to me at first town hall. I was brand new elected, and they came up and they were very aggressive and very sort of angry and caustic. And I had a reaction. I just kind of pulled back because they're so mad. And I was like, wow. And they hadn't even taken the time to understand where I was or anything, but they were just so enthusiastic. So my first reaction to Wolf-PAC was not a positive one, I will tell you. And I said, well, I just don't know. I don't know about that. But just think they were so excited. And then I don't know what happened to those particular volunteers. But then when I got elected, Grant came to my office. And we had a much better conversation, a much more interesting, calm, sort of academic one about these issues. And then Grant can tell the rest of the story about Jack Tate. But that conversation was a real, watershed, because I'd already been predisposed to that. But I will tell you that the sort of aggressive, sort of angry jumping on a legislator, there's two people here. There's a legislator and then there's the actual me. And when the legislator's fine, but the actual me was just a little bit put off by that super aggressive stance. But the legislator me and the personal me, when Grant came into my office and sat down, like that's much more. I didn't need to be persuaded. I just needed to be included. And so when you assume that someone might want to be included, it's a much more welcoming, which is what Grant did. So,
Jenny, that's really interesting. That's the first time I heard that. But yeah, I'd have to say I've met with so many legislators since I became a volunteer. And by far, I have to say, the meeting with you and Jack Tate is by far my favorite. And so that meeting was with me, and for those who might know Walker Green, we came into the meeting thinking we're just going to speak with Jenny, and lo and behold, we get a 2-for-1. This is the first, and I think probably the only 2-for-1 meeting I've ever had where Jenny and Senator Tate talked about the issue, and they pretty much just had the entire meeting by themselves. And me and Walker just sat there and listened, and just kind of slapped our knee laughing once in a while. And at the end, Jenny said, "I'm supportive," and we're still working on Jack Tate. But yeah, one of my by far favorite meetings.
Jack and I went at it. We went at it. And then he got into a tough battle in his Senate race, and he calls me. He's like, "Tell your team to back off. You're outraising me." I go, "Jack, I thought you said money didn't matter." Right?
And I just I have just a limitless amount of respect for you, Jenny. You've had us over to your house countless times. We've packed your house with so many volunteers. We so appreciate that, of how amazing you've been with us over the years. And
but it's really important. And I noticed that Patty Critter's here from Washington, and Patty and I know each other from other bipartisan things. So Patty, it's nice to see you, Senator. If you're still here.
Nice to see you too.
So nice. I was like, oh, there's Patty. So, a lot of good people are working on this grant, and I'm glad that you've been able to recruit, not even recruit, but just connect, because I'll stop talking. But yeah, nice to see you, Patty.
So last question for you, Jenny, is do you feel the issue of corruption in Washington, D.C. is urgent, and more importantly, do you think that it's fixable?
I think it's urgent, and I think that's so interesting when we have the Article 5 conversation, and I'm a Democrat, so I hear from the Democrats, and they lose their minds. They can't believe I'm doing this. I was like, really? The ERA's never been ratified. I mean, come on. But it's not that we don't want this to go and become an amendment. We do. But if the Equal Rights Amendment hasn't been ratified, what we're doing is what you guys say we're doing. We're pushing the needle. We're doing the biggest effort we can. We're putting down the most strong point we can possibly make. If it became ratified as an amendment, okay, great, that'd be great. Or if we had a constitutional but that would go to the courts. I mean, there's gonna be a long process. So the risk to me, when people say, "Don't do that, it's risky," I was like, it's not that risky. The risk is not making the point, and the risk is not standing up. That's where I think the risk lies. So I think we have to keep pushing, and I think we have to keep making our point and keep calling each other out, and keep pointing out where that money is a bad influence in policymaking.
And I think on that note, Jenny, you've been one person that, once again, I have just so much respect for you, because you do speak truth to power. I've seen you do that, and we need to stand up and speak up. And if we don't, that's when we lose. If we don't keep standing up, even if we get knocked down, we lose. And I just thank you so much for being someone that, you're a fighter, and I appreciate you so much for it.
Well, these relationships go well beyond term limits, and I hope to keep joining you even when I'm done in a year and a half or 2 years. I will probably just become a Wolf-PAC member myself.
Deal. Sounds good.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks to both of you. That was great. And I think it's important to hear about times when Wolf-PAC volunteers maybe don't have enough training, and I would just stress that we have a lot of training available at Wolf-PAC, and can provide people with the tools they need to deal with their representatives and senators in an effective way. So I was glad to hear that. Okay, so moving on, our next state is Washington. So Phil, Phil's here. You can turn your video on, and
There we go.
yep, Senator Patty Kruger. Floor is yours. Thanks.
Well, first, before we start, can I just say hi to my friend Jenny? And Jenny, my daughter, just thanks you and Representative Young walk on water. So thanks for all the help you gave her.
Those are all really great connections, and I'm just thrilled to see you here and joining me in this. Let's keep it going.
Yeah. And Phil, it's good to see you.
Oh, good to see you, Senator Patty. I guess you want me to take it away, right? And ask some questions, and I'll follow the format that you've given us.
Yep, that's how it works.
As to Patty's, how she first got into politics, at least in the sense of being a representative or a senator. And I think, if I remember correctly, she was appointed to the job because people realized how good she was going to be at it. Is that a fair assessment of what happened?
Well, yes, in the sense that I was appointed to the House and then won my election, and then was appointed to the Senate and then won my election there. And then had to run 2 more times after that each year and won. So that is how I actually physically got into the legislature. But in terms of my motivation, it goes way back to when I was growing up. I'm one of 9 children. I like to say that we grew up in the minority because we were a blue household in a decidedly red county. And, at our dinner table, religion and politics were what we talked about all the time. So we weren't very politically correct either out of the gate. And we all had very strong opinions, and we were challenged to really think about things. And so over the course of my life, I got very involved in politics, whether it was working on issue campaigns or campaigns for individuals. Got involved with my local Democratic Party when I moved out here to Washington 20 years ago, and became a precinct committee officer and went around and actually met people and knocked on doors and tried to persuade them that whether the issue I was there to represent or the candidate was the one they should vote for. And that's kind of how it happened. And so when the appointment came along in Washington State, it is the precinct committee officers that make that first vote. And I was a precinct committee officer at the time, knew all the precinct committee officers. So that's how they knew where I stood on issues. And that's why that happened.
And very early on, I think she had their respect. And as I could see, too, from seeing certain videos of her and listening to her in certain other events, campaign events, that I could see that she had the respect of her fellow senators early on. So with respect to how she came about to support us and be our prime sponsor for Wolf-PAC, I would say that we had several talks about what was going on, and she was very careful about her approach to making a decision. And that was one of the things that I knew that she would be doing. That's because she's always been a person who's done her homework, and I could, from having heard her talk before, I could tell that she was a very conscientious person as well. So I'll let her tell about how she made her decision to help us.
Well, Phil, you left me no choice. You were my sidekick for quite some time. No, I really have to say that this is where the volunteers of Wolf-PAC are really, really important and valuable in helping to persuade legislators that this is something that they need to pursue and need to pursue it. Now, I always knew that money in politics was not something that I supported or liked and wanted to. I mean, Citizens United, I'm a lawyer. I said at the time that Supreme Court decision came down that it was the worst Supreme Court decision in my lifetime. There have been several second runners up since then.
Yes.
I can assure you, and there's more to come, unfortunately. But that one is foundational. It's foundational to our democracy. It is corrosive, and it will be the end of government as we had originally envisioned it and as we have had it for many generations. But the corrosive effects of money in politics has been going on for quite some time too. So it was even before Citizens United, that decision just put it on steroids. So the only way to really address this is through a constitutional amendment. And that's why when Phil kept coming to me and asking me if I would be willing to put my name on the bill, I agreed. And the first time I did it, I was a co-sponsor. And the second time I did it, I was the
And I wanted to point out how careful you are about it too, and that you did want to try to get an opinion from our Attorney General, Bob Ferguson, who's a well-known now national Attorney General as well. So that was important too, I think, in your process.
It absolutely was. I wanted to make sure that the way I was reading it, that it would, wouldn't be open to attacks. And it was very helpful to have his opinion. And that, of course, as you know, took away some of the Republicans' thunder on the Senate floor. So the opinion was very helpful.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, not on the Senate floor, in the committee room.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So
we need to get it to the Senate floor.
The next question is about your experience with the Wolf-PAC people, and I can say that certainly from my knowledge of our Washington State Wolf-PAC people, that they're very much in favor of you, so to speak. That they recognize how strong you've been in trying to get us our memorial. So, can you give us your perspective on that?
Again, I mean, I think that Wolf-PAC volunteers and advocates for this approach to getting rid of Citizens United, they've been very influential, very helpful. In fact, I've sat on state government now for 5 years, once in the House and then the last several years in the Senate. And that was by far the best attended meeting I have ever seen. And they were all mainly, I mean, the vast majority of them were supporters of the SJM, the Senate Joint Memorial, to get rid or to vote to get rid of Citizens United. And I can tell you that made a big difference in terms of convincing a certain Democrat. I think Jenny talked about this, about, there's some progressives that have a difficult time with this. And one of my colleagues had actually done the flip side of the Constitutional Convention. He had done a petition to Congress for the very same reason, to get rid of money in politics. And I actually supported both because I don't see them as competition. I see them as complementary. And I see them as two approaches to get to the same result. And they both apply pressure to Congress. And that's really what we're trying to do here with this, with the joint memorial. That's really what we're trying to do, is trying to get to that point where Congress will take the step that we all know needs to happen, which is to propose a constitutional amendment and let the state vote.
So the next question on the little list here is, what do you think is the biggest challenge going forward? And I think I know what it is, and it has to do with, of course, the runaway convention theme that we hear so much about, and just overcoming the fear in general. I know, for example, that our Representative Vandana is not affected directly by this coming from other sources like Common Cause, arguing against the use of Article 5, but that she just feels that she's unfamiliar with the process, and that there's this fear that somehow, an imagination that it can, in fact, somehow be run away by some group, taken over by some group. So I think that's one of the biggest things that we have going forward. And I'm just wondering how you feel about that and other issues.
Well, I do think that that is the biggest challenge that we have. That is by far and away the most critical point that people who oppose this will raise every single time, that there's potential for a runaway convention. And they go back to the very beginning of when our Constitution was first created, and they point to that constitutional convention as a quote unquote runaway convention. So I think what all we can do is continue to present them with the facts and with the reality and with I guess persuasion as best we can. We do need Common Cause. I would love to see them rethink their position on the Article 5 convention, because I think that they've been very influential in convincing a lot of the Democrats, at least in my caucus, that this is a potential danger. So, and I think the other danger here too, Phil, is that, it's confusion, right? I mean, it's like what we see out of Washington, D.C. all the time. There we see unrelenting chaos and destruction, but, we also see confusion. And it's intentional. And I think that there is some intentional confusion going on here about whether or not this would be a runaway convention. And we really have to work through that calmly and just just keep plowing ahead. And we do need to have constituents reach out to their legislators individually, sit down, explain to them why this is so critically important to get money out of politics. We're going to have a government led by, billionaires if we're not careful, and or a government controlled by billionaires, I should say, whether that's individuals or corporations. Like I said at the beginning, big money in politics has a very corrosive effect. I vehemently disagreed with the comment from one of my colleagues that money is free speech. It's not free speech. It buys a lot of speech, but it's not the same as free speech. So I'm going to keep working on this. I know you are all going to keep working on this. And I would just encourage everyone who's listening to, do what Mike said at the beginning, and Phil, what you did, be persistent, be persuasive, and be passionate about this cause, and make sure that you're reaching out to your legislator and letting them know that this is a critical need. And it is time that we finally end the corrosive effect of money in politics.
Real quick, Phil, I'd like to ask you what your experience has been working with Senator Kauthar.
With my fellow Wolf-PAC volunteers, you mean?
No, with the senator.
Oh, well, of course. I think I've explained how I feel about her pretty well already. It's I'm just so very fortunate to have her as my senator here in my 48th legislative district of Washington State, and we should all be so lucky.
Thank you, Phil.
Yeah.
Okay. Yet again, another great session. So we have one more state to go, the state of Hawaii. Eric Schrager, and Senator Carl Rhodes. All right, you're both up.
Hey, aloha, everyone. My name is Eric, and I'm probably the most junior member of the crew here as far as the interviewers. I've been a volunteer with Wolf-PAC for about 5 years. And I think just to kind of echo on what Representative Arndt mentioned as far as the volunteers being extremely maybe aggressive, I think part of that could be the just the enthusiasm that you feel when you all of a sudden you see I guess a tool or a way ahead, something that you can actually do to address the issues that are so obvious to all of us, just all of the struggles and challenges that are associated with trying to get our national delegations to listen to us and to pass the bills and the laws that we really want. So for me personally, that was the biggest thing, was when I saw this path, this potential to actually do something, I was very enthusiastic too. And I probably wasn't the most effective as a volunteer at the beginning because I was just very excited and enthusiastic. So, yeah, I think that's probably not super uncommon. But as far as Senator Rhodes, I think I met him the second year, and it was such a great experience because finally I had met a senator, one of our local members of Congress here, who understood what we were trying to do, understood that it wasn't crazy, and that it was actually doable. And so my experience working with him has just been incredible, extremely rewarding. And I appreciate him so much because year after year, he's been there for us in the Senate. So the history of our legislation here in Hawaii has been interesting. We're making progress every year, but Senator Rhodes has been there for us for years now. So thank you so much, Senator Rhodes, for coming on and talking with us. I'm going to shift over to the questions here. So I'll just go through. Could you tell us what was your experience as far as getting involved in politics? I know you were overseas at the beginning, and you're talking about how it was over there as opposed to now.
Well, I mean, for me, I've sort of evolved into it. I've always been interested in politics, even as a little kid. But I think when I was a kid, I didn't realize that just anybody could run for office. I thought you had to know somebody or be some special person. And there was a lot of my family was fairly politically active in the sense that they knew about issues, but they didn't know about campaigns. And it took me a while to figure out that A, anybody can run, and B, I spent several years on Capitol Hill, and that's where I realized that people on Capitol Hill don't usually get elected to anything. They stay in D.C. and it's an important role, but it's not elected. You have to have a home base. And at that point, I'd been there long enough that I didn't have a home base. And so I kind of on a whim, my wife and I decided to move to Hawaii. And I was interested in running when we moved here, but I thought it was such a long shot that I figured, what the heck, I might as well move to somewhere beautiful. And if I don't make it, well, too bad. When the opportunity presented itself, I did run, and I admit I was a little bit surprised. I live in Chinatown, and I was running against a Chinese guy who had almost beaten an incumbent 2 years before. So I was a little surprised that I won, but I've been here for 14 years now. Oh.
You're muted, Eric.
Oh, I thought I was muted. Okay. Can't hear.
Eric, you're still muted.
Can't hear you, Eric.
Okay.
There you go.
I guess I'm going to have the double thing in my earphones here, but that's okay. So over the years, we've been working together. I know that you get what we're trying to do, but do you remember the point where you kind of like said, oh, okay, I understand what they're trying to do, and I'm going to get behind this and really champion it?
I have to admit, I don't. I think I figured it out pretty quickly that I had been working on state level constitutional amendments that, even though they wouldn't have any effect because the federal constitution was being interpreted as speech was money and corporations were people, we'd been working on that for a while before I met you, I think. And so I was already, and of course it hadn't really gone anywhere. So I was looking around for something else. And so when I met with you guys the first time, it's like, okay, that makes sense. And I have to admit, I've been very surprised. I'm unabashedly liberal, and I have a lot of liberal friends, and a lot of them are very worried about the risk, as other senators and representatives and other presenters have said. They see risk where I don't.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And of course, I think any of the volunteers that have been around for a while, they understand the challenge with overcoming fear is such a powerful motivator, and working through the issue, working through the steps and understanding that the risk really, in a practical sense, doesn't exist. I think it is something that we all kind of work our way towards. But yeah. So the next.
Yeah.
We may have lost Eric.
Right.
Yeah, we were
Frozen on my screen anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, there
So,
it goes.
okay,
Am I back?
you are back.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I'm actually using my phone for audio. I'm not sure what's happening, but yeah. So I was just going to ask the last question. As far as you're working with the volunteers here in Hawaii, what's experience?
Sorry, I missed what's been my experience.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I certainly don't. I didn't have an immediate negative impression. Maybe because the Judiciary Committee also has jurisdiction over gun protection legislation. You guys seem pretty in comparison to some people I deal with. But no, it's well organized. You show up when you're supposed. Show up when you're supposed to, in the sense of in the legislative process. You show up when we need you to testify and to submit testimony and all that. And it's nice working with a group that knows what they're doing, and I wish it happened more often.
Well, thanks very much for that compliment. I think we enjoy working with folks like you, and I think the legislature here in Hawaii makes it somewhat simpler for us to get down to the Capitol, as we've talked about. But yeah, hopefully this will be our year. I know we've been hammering away for a few years now and passed the Senate the last couple of years. So hopefully this will be our year to pass both chambers and get it done.
We'll see. I just don't know. It's hard to pass. It's hard to pass rezos, especially important ones, and we'll see. I'm guardedly optimistic.
Awesome. Thanks, Senator.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, that's going to do it. I would like to thank all of the legislators who joined us today and gave us their perspective, and also the Wolf-PAC members, a couple of volunteers, a couple of pros. I thought this was really enlightening. I loved hearing from the legislators and their points of view.